Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Monday evening program. I'm Dylan Ryder from the Johnson County Library. We have the privilege to be joined by Efren Mojica from All About You Consulting, who will be talking about networking. Efren is the founder and principal consultant of All About You Consulting and is a 10-plus year partner and guest speaker with the Johnson County Library. Feel free to participate in our discussion by using the chat to add your comments and questions. Efren will attempt to address each question at different points throughout the presentation. The contents of this program will be recorded for future viewing. And once again, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Efren.
Thank you, Dylan and Marty, again for the invitation. And as I always do, I like to say a special thank you to the Johnson County Library. I think when I last looked in my folders and how far back we went as a partnership, it's been about 13 years. So certainly the first time doing this online, but definitely still a great activity. For those that joined, I want to thank you for joining us. And hopefully when all this stuff clears up, we can all see each other in one of the upcoming sessions when we can get back live. So today, this evening, we're going to talk about networking. This is one of my 3 presentations, actually I guess it's 4 now, that I cycle through in my partnership with JCL. First one being resumes. Second one is usually interviewing. Then we talk a little bit about networking, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, networking for professional success. And then the newest one, and this is based on patron demand actually, is LinkedIn Basics. So that's something we're going to look at down the road. So if there's an opportunity after this session, you want to provide some feedback, I can guarantee you the JCL staff reads it, and so do I, and that's how we get to the sessions that we provide for the patrons. So check them out, and when they are open, a lot of great resources there. Always happy to partner with them. So tonight, like I said, we're going to talk about networking for professional success. So a little bit about me and what's coming up. Next on 6/1, which is not that far away, we're going to have a presentation on interviewing. That's usually one of the longer sessions. I like for that to be very interactive to help people as they hopefully get an interview. They will be more prepared and give them a couple things to think about as they think about themselves, how to best position themselves and their value add when and if they get an interview. So that's going to be Monday, June 1st, 6:30 to 8 p.m. and hope to see you there. And if we're going to still be doing this over Zoom, encourage everybody to register when that comes available on the JCL site on the register link. I think usually it's been shut down by Sunday the night before. So I encourage you to get in there and sign up and hope to see you there. All right, so on we go. Some ground rules before we get going. So I always like my presentations to be interactive. So questions are encouraged. And as Dylan said, he is going to be watching the chat window, and I encourage you to ask your questions anytime during the presentation. I think we have a small enough audience tonight that it's not going to be a problem to get questions answered. So we'll balance moving things along with getting the answers to the questions you all have. I know some of you are busy and might have to drop early, and that's not a problem. So you can catch the replay, and I'll certainly be doing this presentation again over the months at the library. You can attend in person. So second bullet here is if we have enough time, we can certainly get into topics like resumes and interviewing. Those will be other sessions. Tonight is really about networking, but certainly they all intertwine, and you can ask questions if we have time. And then, as Dylan had mentioned as well, if you're not already on mute, and I just learned this from my day-to-day world with online meetings, keep phones on mute, and we should avoid any background noise. And on we go. So a little bit about me. You're probably wondering, okay, who's this guy? Why is he here talking to me about networking and resumes and all this other stuff, right? So my background is here, just a little bit of a snapshot. So I really got my background in all of this, the resumes, the interviewing, and certainly the networking in corporate America. I joined corporate America about 20 years ago. I've been with Sprint, which is now T-Mobile, since 2001. I like to say I'm a proud Navy veteran, spent 7 years as a naval officer. And it was really back then where I got an appreciation for the importance of networking, the resumes, the interviewing, all of that, and how important that is to all of us as business professionals, regardless of where we are in our job search. I was working with an executive recruiting firm back there, and they're the ones that actually placed me at Sprint. And they really embedded in my head how important it is to look out for yourself professionally, and that's all those attributes, those things I just mentioned, whether it's the resumes, knowing yourself, knowing the value that you bring, but certainly making sure you're doing your part so that other people can know those things about you, and that's where the networking comes in. Okay. And last but not least, as Dylan has said, all of this over the last 15 or so years has fed into All About You Consulting, which is my side business that I do a lot of on nights and weekends for groups and like this and other corporations, including my own. And that's how I got to you here today. So that said, any questions? And there might be a little bit of a lag between question answering and chat and all that stuff, but I'll pause frequently and make sure that we get your questions answered if you did submit one. Okay. Dylan, any questions so far?
No, sir. Keep on going.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so networking. This is a little bit of an interesting slide that I like to show. And as people invest their time sitting here with us tonight, they think, well, what can this guy teach me about networking? This was something that came last time LinkedIn. Hopefully a lot of you have either have an account or at least have heard of it. Back in the like 2012, 13 period, they were sending this out, and they stopped doing it since. But at the time, they had sent me this note saying, hey, Efren, congratulations, you were one of the top 5% viewed. And at that time, it was on 200 million people. I've always remembered that, not because it's a pat on the back to say, hey, good job, I must be doing great, but it really made me think about what are those things that I'm doing that are getting people to view my profile. All right. And these are the people that are reaching out to me to connect. And then I, in turn, get to know about, and they get to know something about me, and which feeds into my whole approach for networking. So these are the things that I plan on sharing with you tonight, albeit in our 60 to 90 minutes. And hopefully, as I give you some ideas and some thoughts, and these are the same things I do for my clients that I work with, you can take some of this and integrate them into your own networking plan as you see fit. Okay. So this is usually where I ask a question. Maybe we'll pause here. So for those that are here, would you care to share why you are here? Any thoughts? Anything you'd like to share? What brings you here tonight? Typically, I'll hear from people that say things that they're worried about, or some of the things that they like to get better with. But I always like to hear where people feel they need improvement. So does anybody have any comments they'd like to share with the group on why you're here and what brought you here tonight? We'll give it that 10-second awkward pause. Any takers on that? No comments? Nothing in chat?
So, Efren, Marty points out networking enables us to create social and career networks. However, where does that intersect with this current situation we all find ourselves in?
So the current situation, and it is a very challenging time, and certainly one of the things that I've always believed is networking is a physical contact sport. And by that, I mean you have to get out there and you have to do it. All right. So now we are obviously limited by 6 feet and 10-person gatherings and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean you can't leverage some of the new technology to network. And those are some of the things we're going to talk about here tonight to give you some ideas. I mean, as much as I advocate and I tell people it's important to meet and to call and pick up the phone, you can certainly do a lot of that via technology. Certainly, we're doing it via Zoom in some ways here tonight. But there's other tools and other social media that we can leverage. Okay, so COVID or not, you can still make headway and progress in your networking plan. Okay. Any other comments that came in?
Nothing just yet.
Okay.
We've got a quiet bunch on this Monday evening.
No, that's fine. That's fine. On we go. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about a couple things here. So this is our agenda, and this is going to be similar to what you find on the handout sheet, which you receive via email from Dylan on the Meeting Maker. So we'll give you some data points to ponder here. We'll talk a little bit about the differences between networking and then why we should network as business professionals. Some of the risks when networking, it's not all rosy. There are some things that everybody has to be mindful of, and we'll certainly talk about that tonight. We'll talk a little bit about the differences between networking and mentoring, and then mentoring and a sponsor. Between those two individuals, we'll talk about why they're important. We'll spend some time talking about the execution of our networking plan, your network plan. We'll spend some time talking about Facebook and LinkedIn and how to utilize those, and then also some best practices from successful people, and that should get us to the end of our time tonight. Okay. So objective for all of this stuff is really to better understand what networking is, and again, why it's important for us as business professionals to network, and why we have to make sure we are methodical and we have a game plan together. And we're also going to talk about the tools and ways to start and execute the plan so that it is effective for you. Okay. So who chimed in? As I always do in my presentations, and I've done this for every presentation, every single year, everything is updated a bit, not a whole complete update in my material, but there's enough that goes on with resume and interviewing and certainly networking strategy that does warrant some refreshed data. So that's what feeds into here. And a lot of times I always rely on my own network to provide information and share their perspectives on effective networking. And a lot of these people are executives in their companies, recruiters nationwide, not just in Kansas City, and certainly not in the telecommunications industry where I've been, but people everywhere, because I really want it to be a broad breadth of people and perspectives that will benefit the audiences that I speak to here. So this is just a summary of the industries, the levels, and a little bit about those people who are all very happy and very privileged to be able to chime in. And that's what you'll see incorporated in the upcoming slides. Okay. Let's take a little bit of a quiz here. So we really need some participation on this one. So let's say you all here are hiring for something. It can be something as simple as hiring for somebody to work in your house, okay? Now let's say you got one candidate. The first one comes in and they got some good credentials, pretty good solid resume. It looks like they have some pretty good experiences. You see from what they have sent you, could be an email, could be on the resume that they provided, accomplishments, you can see some awards, good safety record, so they're not going to work on your bathroom or your house and burn anything down. And then they're also saying they have a good track record of on-time completion. So just based on some very simple, high-level stuff like this, any thoughts on this candidate one, on how you would work with him or her in, or how you would consider them for doing that job in your house? Thoughts? Type it away in the window. And if you're not sure, then I think, I don't know if there's an off mute button. Hopefully everybody knows where the chat feature is. Anything coming in yet, Dylan?
Well, I don't know about anybody else. Seems pretty good to me. I'm just glad hosts don't have to take quizzes.
Yeah, right. Anybody else? We'll give it another 10 seconds.
Marty points out she'd want to talk to people who had used the candidate's services.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So this is so let's think that's a good segue. I think Marty's actually seen this presentation. So let's say candidate 2, who you talk to, has all of that, but then they are recommended by one or more people that you know that vouches for them and says this is the person that you can't go wrong with. This is who you want to use. So if you just contrast in this simple example the difference between candidate 1 and 2, you can see how clearly the value is of somebody um, that is vouched for. Okay, you're using your network, and Marty said it. You're contacting, it could be your neighbors, it could be a coworker, a friend, whoever, right? You're basically getting a recommendation, and it's that power of networking, leveraging those people that you know, and you're comfortable of asking, who they recommend, and it actually goes a long way in a comfort level in either hiring a person, working with somebody, or just even socializing with them. So anyway, that's the quiz. I just wanted to again show the difference here and the importance, because this is all something we can relate to, right? We've all been in that situation, and we often will talk to people we know and get that recommendation. Okay. Successful job hunting. Okay, I don't know where people are in their job hunting, and those certainly attending here. Some people might be active, some people might be passive, and by passive I mean happy in their job, but you know what? There's always a good opportunity that could be coming down around the corner. So you might as well explore it, or you're at least open to. And so this is where this graphic really shows the intersection and the balance between the circle there of the optimized resume, really developing your interviewing prowess, which takes a lot of work. And like I said, we'll get to that on June 1st. And then on the bottom left, there's the robust networking, people and online. All of these 3 circles together here, and that one common area they have in the very middle, that's where everything, I think, successfully intersects for job hunting. You have to do all of these things. A lot of times people will come to me, and I've had clients over the years, and I've been with All About You Consulting, and I've had that company started. I mean, it's going on over 15 years, right? And one of the things that I hear from a lot of people is, "Hey, Efren, if you help me with my resume, will I get a job?" Yeah, my first question is actually, what's your networking plan? Because the resume, just by simply applying and throwing them out to websites and companies, isn't going to always do it. You have to have that networking plan, and then of course part of it is really knowing yourself so that you can articulate that stuff capably. Okay, so that is the trifecta of successful job hunting. Any questions that have come in so far, Dylan?
No, sir. No questions as yet,
Okay.
except
Okay.
for one from asking for a friend. What networking
Yeah.
advice would you give for someone who's maybe by nature a little more on the introverted side?
Yeah. There's people are, yeah, all over the spectrum as far as sociability, introvertedness, extrovertedness. I think I'm in the middle, I would say. I find my energy on both sides. I think for those that are introverted, you can certainly craft a networking plan and strategy that fits your personality. All right. Do you have to talk to people? Do you have to engage? Yes. You have to think of it like, your job, right? I think most jobs there's some level of interaction, either with coworkers, with customers, with clients. Okay, so if you look at it from that standpoint, I submit that most people will be very good at their jobs and do that fine. Okay, without having to spend every waking minute, every post work hour with those people. You can strike that balance, right? And it does take practice. I think for those that aren't natural with talking to other people or engaging them, hopefully some of the tips here will help. But certainly, it's just looking at it like it's part of the job, and it really is, right? It's part of your professional job. And if you look at it that way, hopefully it takes a little bit of the angst from, oh my gosh, I have to socialize. It's like you're going out to a power and light district or something like that. Certainly not the case. You're there on a mission. You're there to learn. You're there to share. And I think if you put it under those lenses, you should do fine with respect to making it not so intimidating and really being able to successfully convey about yourself what you're looking for and about your professional background, while also getting information about the other person. Okay. So networking defined. Usually I'll ask the audience for what that definition is, but I will give you a couple definitions actually. The first one's really mine, my definition. I really think it is a proactive and deliberate, and I should have highlighted those and bolded them and maybe made them caps, all right? But it has to be proactive and it has to be deliberate. And it is the meeting with others to learn, to educate, and lay the groundwork for future interactions and opportunities. So there's a lot of very interesting things in just that one sentence, right? So the proactiveness and deliberate effort is certainly very important. You can't go into this without a plan. All right. If you are asking somebody to invest their time to talk to you, and I've actually had a couple patrons from the library after the sessions reach out to me and want to network. I think the ones that have impressed me the most is when there's an actual plan versus, hey, let's get together. And because it's not ideal to sit around and it's, what are we talking about? Okay. It's not necessarily a social gathering, if you will, but there is in that usually 30-minute, 60-minute amount of time, you want to get certain things out of the networking meeting, whether it's the first one, whether it's ongoing meetings. Okay, so you have to have that plan, know what you want out of it, and also you should mimic that in what you're soliciting from the other person as well. Okay, so learning, educating, laying the groundwork for future interactions. I think a good networking opportunity is when people want to keep meeting with you down the road, and they'll give you that time of day. I think that's always a good sign. Is if people are not replying, or you're not getting that traction, you have to really relook at your approach and say, what could I do better so that people will want to meet with me, people will want to reach out to me, people will want to stay connected with me, or leverage me as a contact and a resource. Those are some of the measures of success that I think we should all strive to get. Okay, one part here that I think is also very important is the learning part. Okay, it's not, networking isn't about talking for 30 minutes and 45 minutes and 60 minutes and it's all one way. Uh, I had a former chief network officer that always used to say, hey, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So you do twice as much listening as talking. Okay, but it is important. And I would challenge anybody, and certainly the people that I work with, that at the end of that networking session, if you are finished with that and you can't remember uh, a good chunk of stuff from what you learned from that individual, then maybe it's time to go back and relook at it. However, if you can say, I know where he works, I know his job, I know what his or her challenges are, I know what they want to do in the future, you're on the right track. Okay, so other definitions here, we're not going to go through all of them, but it is, the common theme here is going out, interacting, building, growing, learning. Okay, those are the core tenets of networking. Okay. Any questions so far, Dylan?
Not as yet. It looks like you're covering
Okay.
everything very thoroughly. I'm curious, are there any particular area networking events or services or job clubs that you would recommend that I could go ahead and link to in the chat?
Yeah, you know, there's nothing in particular. I've done a few around here that actually bring me in to do these presentations, and so I would say, without endorsing one specific one, uh, a lot of churches and religious affiliations actually have those. The community centers actually have a lot of good access to networking groups. Okay, and at the very end of this presentation, I'm actually going to cover a couple areas where you'll be able to, I think, network and get some ideas on where to actually to meet other people and expand on your networking. So we'll cover a little bit about that at the end. Okay. Okay, so why network? So there's certainly advantages to it. All right, there is, let me see here. Okay, so some personal examples I will start with just for myself, and I attribute all of these to networking. So first of all, I remember one time, and it was my brother, actually, of all people. He was actually with a financial company, and then he got let go. And I think what happened there? I think they shut down. They got bought out. And so what ended up happening was I had a friend that worked for a pharmaceutical company, the guy I played tennis with, and I said, "Hey, here's the situation. Is your company hiring any opportunities?" And because of that tight relationship, he said, "Hey, give me the resume. Let me take a look at it. I'll get it to the right people." My brother got hired and got picked up by that company. Okay. Another example tied to that. So this is the tenuous pharmaceutical industry. So in that division so he was there probably about 2 years, but that whole division of that company was shut down. So trying to keep my brother whole and trying to stay in this industry in his state, I actually went to my own LinkedIn, found some other not just veterans but fellow service academy graduates, and I found one that worked for a company named Stryker that was on medical appliances, and I didn't know him. And I just said, "Hey, we're tied together through our service academy affiliation. I'm a fellow vet. Blah blah blah. Here's my situation. You guys hiring?" And he said, "Listen, hey, get me your brother's resume. I'll get it to the right people." And he let me know right away, "Yeah, we are hiring." So my point in telling those stories is that I was proactive enough to go out there, leverage this network that I had, and use it not just for me, but for somebody I knew. In this case, my brother. And I've done this for similar people as well. So I think that's a good lesson, that you have to be proactive. You can't be afraid to go and reach out. Worst cases, they're going to say no, right? Certainly my company right now, with All About You Consulting, uh, I spend nothing on marketing. All my clients have been all referrals, and I attribute that to the network. And then last but not least, having been and survived in telecommunications, certainly Sprint, now T-Mobile for almost 20 years, you can't do that without having a good network. I've always said I'm not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, but I do know where to find those sharp tools. So I think that's the important thing, is that when you know those right people, those people are willing to work with you, to share with you, and vice versa. You can strike that balance with a symbiotic relationship, and set your own self up for success. Okay. But there are some risks when it comes to networking, and there are a few. Whoops, went too fast. So a couple things to be on the lookout for, and a lot of people, especially those that have attended these sessions, they do get a little bit. They're candid and say they haven't networked in a while. They've had the same job forever. They've been in the same company for the longest time. They haven't even needed to write a resume. So so they think, okay, networking is something I got to do. They just dive into it without thinking about it. But there are some of the gotchas. And so what are those things? So it can backfire. Okay? In particular, the people that you think are going to help you really don't. I do remember a situation, and this was one guy that in early days of Sprint, and I remember he had approached me to see if I would help mentor him and then network with him. And he was just trying to get as many people in his network as possible. And as he was applying for a job, I remember the vice president at the time said, "Oh yeah, so and so had asked me to recommend him." But the takeaway here is that VP didn't think that highly of that individual. So the VP told that hiring manager exactly what he thought. And it's like, "Yeah, he's all right." So the lesson here is that if you are thinking you're going to pull the trigger on an effective networking or effective contact, and this person or these people are going to be huge advocates for you, well, if you're not doing your due diligence, it could backfire just like that. Okay. The other thing I tell people about the risk is don't expect it to just happen overnight. Okay. This takes time. Relationships take a long time to build, for people to get comfortable, to really know you. So this is another way of saying don't delay. Because if you think, well, you know what, I'm fine with the job. I don't need to do anything right now. I'll do it when I need it. Well, if you are looking for a job right now, or you're actively seeking and job hunting, and then you're hoping all these people are going to come to the rescue and just start advocating for you, that likely won't be the case. So you have to start early, and you have to keep it consistent. Okay, and then last but not least, you really have to keep it sincere. You shouldn't go into these networking relationships necessarily expecting anything. Okay, you should, if anything, you should expect more to be giving to your network contacts, how you can help them, and normally that would come back, and they would pay it back in spades. So it is a two-way street. Okay. Any questions so far on why we network and then risks to networking?
No, sir. You're all
Okay.
good there. It looks like it's
Okay.
just based off of the information you give, it's just that much more important to find trusted resources, kind of similar to the candidate recommendations, going off of somebody else's information, a recommendation for a person. It's just as important to
Right.
find a trusted recommendation for a networking event or service.
Absolutely. You know, in my experience, people are not going to throw their name or their reputation on the line for just anybody. Right? And I found the strongest people that will do that for me are those that I have a really strong relationship with. Okay, they know me professionally, they know about my character, they can attest to that, and I certainly wouldn't put anybody in a position to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that in the LinkedIn portion here, but you know, you really have to make sure that you are doing that correctly, and when you do reach out and ask people for their time to meet with you and to network. I know most people try to do it every month or whatever frequency, but don't uh, don't bite off more than you can chew. And that guy that I mentioned a little bit a few minutes ago, and that was his problem, right? Matter of fact, I remember another friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, so and so contacted me to network with him." How did he describe it? Something along the lines of great idea, poor execution. So what that meant was that this guy was just trying to sign everybody up, trying to get on people's calendars, and then he disappeared. Okay, and that backfired in a big way. I think that's a great lesson. Not to say anybody here would do it, but it's important to remember that it's better to have a few really good, high quality networking contacts versus a bunch of people you don't know. And you'll see me jump in a couple slides and how you select even in your network contacts for LinkedIn. I'm very selective. I would say I probably accept less than 10% of applicants and not applications, but requests that come in to my inbox. And the fundamental, I think, a criteria that I look at is who do I know the person, and what are you know, how can this um, both benefit me, and how do I think I could benefit this individual as well. And so I think there is a strategy to that, and not just spamming people with invites. But it is ties back to networking well versus networking haphazardly. Okay. So networking versus mentoring. So what is the difference? Does anybody have any thoughts there on what mentoring is? And maybe some of you out there already have a mentor, and can explain a little bit about what that relationship is like, and how you see it fitting into your own networking strategy. Any thoughts?
I'll keep an eye out here, but speaking for myself, I think having a mentor in your either in the industry you are currently in or the industry you're looking to get
Yep.
into is more than just sharing skills. It's more than
Yeah.
just preparing you for what your day to day looks like. Um, it's about an organizational mentality that they get to pass along to you, that it
Hmm.
speaks more to than just the work itself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's a good way to characterize it. You know, and I think to add to that, it really is a matter of you seeking information to help you develop from somebody with more experience. And this has nothing to do with age, right? I've been a mentor in sprints, one of the sprints leadership programs for going over 10 years, right? And more often than not, a lot of the people that I actually mentor are older than me, and that has nothing to do with the age part. And I can guarantee you, I've learned a lot from them as well. So it is really, by definition, what mentoring is where you're just looking for to work with somebody, to learn from somebody with a little bit more experience in an area that you might want to brush up on, or get a little more uh, sharpness in, and those are the people to approach. So it's definitely worth it to have a mentor as part of your networking mix. Okay, so yeah, definitely a form of networking, and good to have. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about mentoring here. So execution is definitely the key to this. Just like with the networking I was mentioning earlier, we talked about not taking on too much, and scheduling too many meetings and those kind of things. But for the mentoring, it's really important to have that fit. Okay, more so than anything, this is somebody that hopefully you're uh, having a relationship with for years. I know my very first mentor that I had at Sprint back in, I think it was 2001, 2002. It was a program, a leadership program, and he was my mentor for the duration of the program, but I continued that for another 3 or 4 years until he had passed away. So it's important, and the reason we had that for so long is because I think we genuinely liked each other and had a good mutual respect. So it is important to find somebody that you like. Okay. The other things to mentoring, very important, and I've mentored with a couple. My own mentors have been some of them were C-levels at Sprint, Chief Human Resources Officer and our Chief's Customer Experience Officer, to be specific, at the time. And one of the things I learned is key to making that really successful is to be organized. Okay, so that includes, okay, you're scheduling this meeting with them, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. Do you have an idea of what you're going to talk about? What questions are you going to ask? Are you getting them that information in advance? The last thing you want to do is drop it in their inbox on your way over there and then expect them to be prepared. Every mentor, I certainly am this way, and I tell all those people I mentor the same thing. Give me enough time to prepare so I can be prepared for you. Okay, so that's part of the organization. Think about these things in advance. Tied to that, one of the things we've learned as we've had senior executive mentors is that you should keep those notes organized. And what does that mean? So let's say you want to talk one meeting about career development and the other one about ethics, for example. Well, the last thing you want to do is 3 meetings down the road is ask those same questions because you forgot you talked about those things. And I've seen this happen. So keeping track of all that, keeping a running history of what your subjects are, what you're talking about, what their responses are, I think it really lends to uh, appreciation by them to show how organized you are. And then at some point down the road, even if the mentoring relationship ends, you can at least reflect back and say, these are all the things that I learned. And it really does, it goes a long way in resonating and building your own reputation with those people. And they'll gladly pass you off to other people or introduce you to other people that you can mentor with. Okay. So that's mentoring. Yes, it is all on you. Nobody else, it's on you. Mentor versus sponsor. So what's the difference? So you do need them both. So for a mentor, we talked about what that person is, okay, seeking information. A sponsor, the big difference between the sponsor and the mentor, it's a subtle, but it is a very specific difference. And yes, you need to add a sponsor to that mix. And the difference really is the mentor, because you are asking him or her for information to help uh, educate yourself, right? They'll talk to you. The sponsor, on the other hand, is going to talk about you. So this is somebody that you typically work with or has firsthand knowledge of your capabilities, your performance, your ability to deliver. Somebody that in a conversation that they might be at where they get asked, hey, Efren, do you know somebody that would be a good fit for the position? And then I would say, oh, you know what? I got the perfect person for you. Here's their resume. Here's their number. Here's who they are. I did this for this person without that person even, asking for that help. That's what a sponsor is. And so to have, for you all to have somebody that's knows about you that well, can attest to your background, can attest to your character, work ethic and all of that is key. Okay, so definitely to have it. both very important to successful networking. Okay. Any questions so far?
Not from the chat so far. Oh, actually, we just had one in. Breaking news. Marty asks,
Great.
do you ask someone to be your sponsor? It's something that feels very formal. So whether it's a sponsor, a mentor, it seems like an agreement of sorts is struck. Yes?
Yeah, and in a sense, the mentor is usually somebody that's assigned, and that could be formal or informal. So I've approached it, and I've been on both sides of that two ways. I've been assigned a mentor. I've had people assigned to me as the mentor, and then there's other people that I see out there. I'm like, I just know them, and I think they're just top tier A level people. I'll just say, hey, listen, you mind if we just get together? Grab lunch, grab coffee. So that's just where I just did it on my own, right? Sponsor's a little bit different. I don't think I've ever said, hey, can you be my sponsor per se? I didn't use it in those words, but I know where I have been on both sides of that is where I've called, and typically my past bosses who I've maintained good relationships with and have seen me perform. I could say, hey, uh, uh, actually the first VP that hired me on as his chief of staff, I call him and say, Bill, question for you. And I remember when I called him, I was in Vegas. I said, I got a question. It's about a job. And, he gave me good advice, but he's also the first one to put in a word for me. Okay. A sponsor doesn't necessarily need to be anybody senior either. It could be somebody that speaks highly of you and can attest to your work. I've used that before, even in my own company, to have somebody ask somebody to put in a good word, or if they feel comfortable reaching out to somebody to say, yeah, Efren's just this kind of person who would be good for this opportunity. So it was a little more informal versus something, a title, i.e. the sponsor, that was bequeathed or assigned to me.
Okay.
Okay.
And we
Okay.
have one more thought. I'll see if I can put it
Mhm.
into words here. Um, so networking is a two-way street. You take some to give some, and there's expectations on the other side that they will do the same. Um, I find the idea interesting in kind of balancing those expectations with a kind of maybe quid pro quo buddy network um, type of, well, I did you this favor back then, so you owe me this. Can you speak on that a little bit? And I'll click off here.
Yeah, so that could be part of it, right? And I said earlier, there shouldn't be an expectation of that. Now, is there like that? Sure. There is the good old boy, good old girl network, right? There is that kind of thing out there, okay? Um, and that's not really part of what I uh, train people on and give advice on, okay? Because I think ultimately there are ulterior motives in those scenarios, and those expectations of favor of doing favors, I think aren't as healthy. Now, does it happen? Yeah, but I think the longer lasting and more beneficial relationships for networking are going to be ones where you can advocate, you can be sponsors even for each other, but there is no expectation. You do that because you understand that networking is about trying to help, because it will come around. Okay, there was no expectation. That's really the key part there. You don't feel like, or you don't say, listen, I'm going to put you in for this job. Yeah, you better write something nice for me. Okay, that shouldn't be the case. If there you find yourself in a situation like that, and it's you think it's something that you both can find some mutual benefit from, by all means do that. The risk is then somebody just feels shorted. Okay, so I will always approach it from the standpoint of let's just do this. We'll help each other down the road. No specific quid pro quo. Okay. All right, executing that working plan. So who do you know, make a list? I think that's the big thing. And that's the first thing I will tell people to do. Matter of fact, when I work with people on networking, I'll say, hey, tell me a list of people that you work with. Who can help you with a job? Who can help you with this facet of your job? who can help you on this endeavor in your personal life. More often than not, people really have to think about it, and they don't really have that at the top of their head. Or I'm surprised more often than not, they can't think of all those people from the business side who can really speak and to their backgrounds, or just be a good business networking contact. So you have to start taking inventory of that. That's part of how I think you can grow your LinkedIn um, network base, let alone your electronic Rolodex. Okay, so things to consider there. These could be your past bosses, your past coworkers. I even tell my own team right now, the people that we should be doing that more regularly are the people that we're in projects with right now. The things that we are working in and on in a day-to-day basis with those people. We are in the trenches with them. You are in the trenches with them in your day-to-day work, right? So who best to know what you're going through, the frustrations, the joys, the tears, right? All the battle scars of working on a job than those people that you're working with every day. The biggest gap, I think, is when people like, okay, we're done with the project, see you later, see you in the next one, without really harnessing or leveraging that relationship to take it forward. I'll give you some ideas when we talk on LinkedIn, but that's a very good pool of people to add to your network, and often a missed opportunity. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, as you add those people, just make sure you're not taking on more than you can chew. Okay, you really want to be that powerful ally for them. Okay. Okay, we talked about these things already. Okay, more information on executing the plan. Okay, you have to mind the fine points. Okay, so what does that mean? So, and I've seen this, right? Somebody wants to start networking. They're getting desperate for a job. They connect, and then they're like, okay, here we are, first meeting. Hey, I need a job. So don't make it awkward like that. All right. Most cases when you are reaching out and networking with somebody, last thing they're prepared to do is just hear that, hey, do you have a job for me? That is usually a very uncomfortable thing. Now, if you preface that on the front end and you reach out to people that you're looking for a job, that's fine. But normally, when you're reaching out to somebody for the first time, you don't want to put them in a position to uh, offer a job or recommend a job before they even know you. Okay, so don't make it awkward. You should be able to answer the question if they ask, "How can I help you?" And at the same time, like I said earlier, you should be asking them the same thing: "How can you help them?" Um, Also know your 30-second elevator speech, and this is usually a fun one that I do in when I'm at the library with people. I ask people what their 30-second elevator speech is and if they're able to actually give it. And so what is that? If you're not familiar with a 30-second elevator speech, imagine you are in your building. You get in the elevator and there's your CEO, and she's asking you what you do. Do you know what to say in that 30-second ride? Okay, it's really your sales pitch, and most people don't practice that and aren't sure what to say or exactly the right things to say. So it's important to practice that. Know things that you're doing, things that drive you, things even people that you're working with, how you're adding value to the company at that point in time. Okay, those are all parts of these things that should be tip of the iceberg in your head that you should be able to articulate at a moment's notice. Okay, and then last but not least, and not part of this presentation per se, but it's important to make sure you have your resume ready to go, because more often than not, when you meet with somebody in your network, whether they are new or whether they're existing, having an updated resume is certainly going to help. Okay. Any questions so far, Dylan?
Nothing so
We'll
far.
pause.
Keep
We'll
on going.
pause and okie doke. Okay, so networking online. We are in a interesting time, as we talked about earlier, but networking online is certainly a tool that can help us maintain that. Okay, and I would say that anything you should leverage it to its fullest. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about here are some of the gotchas that I've seen people not take into consideration when networking online. As you can see by this funny Dilbert article, right? People look online. Without a doubt. Okay, if you don't think people are going to find anything about you, you're naive. You have to really assume people are going to find stuff about you. As a matter of fact, one of my network contacts, he's a CEO of his own recruiting firm. I had talked to him about networking, not networking. Yeah, a little bit about networking, but also resumes. And he had told me that his recommendation now is that right now resumes are good, certainly have their spot in your professional repertoire, but LinkedIn is taking as much precedence now and importance as a resume. He had said that he went to a hiring executive and said, "Hey, I got this candidate for you." So my friend had the resume, gave it to him, and the thing that that executive did, turned right over to the side, went on his laptop and said, "What's his name?" Or maybe it was a she, but whatever. And what he did, he went right online to see what that person's profile looked like on LinkedIn. Okay, and then it's not a far cry out there from looking on Facebook. I just interviewed 17, almost 20 graduate and undergraduate students for an internship that we were going to have on my team. Did I look at LinkedIn? Absolutely. Did I look at other things like their Facebook? If it was out there, absolutely. So social media is out there for others to check on and to help put a picture together what kind of candidate you are potentially going to be like. And the reason simply it's done, it shouldn't be a surprise. There are so many people applying for positions. Just the internship position that I had, I told our human resources to stop at 100 resumes. I did not have enough time to read all of them. I read a chunk of those. Okay, so how do I then get people in to do an interview? Well, certainly the resume is key, but then how do I whittle it down from, let's say, 50 good qualified people on resume? Well, I'll start finding any other way to whittle them down. Okay, so again, this one slide articulates all of that. So be careful with your online social persona. Okay, so we'll keep digging into some of that. This little piece of information on networking online, and this is from a career builder survey not too long ago, but this number, if anything, has gone up. 70% of employers use social media to screen candidates, and 43% of employers use social media to check on current employees. So yeah, I don't do that for current employees, but certainly when hiring, yeah. So it's just, again, a good data point to show how networking online and your social media tie together. Okay. I'm going to give you some interesting statistics here. So this isn't stuff Efren made up, but I found it. Okay, and we're not going to go through all of these line items in detail, but I think it's important to see some interesting facts here about networking online. So job candidates, and a little bit about what people find when looking at job candidates and the types of information. So you can see the themes here: substance, excessive use of substance abuse, or excessive use at all, right? Or how much they do it. Criminal behavior. If qualifications don't quite line up, let's say the resume says you have that master's, but you don't see that anywhere else, that's going to stick out. And these are decent percentages here. We're talking 30% to down to 12%. Okay, so there are certain things here that people are looking for when they search for you on a Google search. Okay, and it's not that hard to find. Okay, next slide. Other reasons employers check social media. This is a pretty high one. Does the candidate have a professional online persona? These days, as I've told people for the last couple of years, if you don't have an online persona, I mean more LinkedIn. Most people have Facebook, but for professional purposes, LinkedIn, if you don't have one, it actually sets off some bells. Why is that? Okay, so there is a downside if you don't have a well thought out, modernized social media presence. Other things that they check is what are people posting about the candidate. So this is if you're not hiding your Facebook profile well, and people can come out there and check it out and see what you're posting, what people post about you, and that kind of thing. I mean, it's done. It's public, right? And all that stuff feeds into reasons to not hire you. Other areas. These are, on the flip side, things that employers look for on social media that help you get a job, and things that have led to getting a job. This shows that somebody's well-rounded. you can probably pick up, there's still ways to do it online, somebody's personality just on the things they might see, things they post, the jobs that they might have had. Certainly on LinkedIn, you can get the rewards and accolades, communication skills while not verbal. You can see the writing um, competency on things like, it could be anything from Twitter to Instagram to LinkedIn. Okay. There's also ways to look at that interaction that you have with other companies. Do people put good references about you? And certainly LinkedIn, people can write recommendations about you. Okay, and then also some level of followers for those with Twitter and Instagram. So those are all different data points. Okay. So any questions on any of that? I thought very interesting, and it's good to see the numbers and everything in a succinct 3 slides. Any questions so far?
Yes, sir. So Marty asked, do you have any special advice for college students or graduates that may have a lot of party pics on their social media accounts? It seems like they should maybe scrub those right away.
Well, so it comes down to what you want people to share. I think if you know people are doing that and people are looking at it, I think for college kids, especially undergrad, they might not even think of that, right? And then all of a sudden they're applying for an internship, and lo and behold, somebody like me that's evaluating them for an internship sees stuff. Okay, now they might not care, and I think that's really the gist of it. If you don't care, somebody's can see that, then you roll the dice. I think it's more important to understand how people use it and how it can affect you positively and negatively. So I'm not saying to scrub it. That's your decision, and I'm the last person that should be recommending how people adjust their settings. I'm here to just say here's some of the risks, so you can adjust accordingly. Okay.
I think it's also important to point out that as opposed to say you're tagged in a questionable photo, let's say a user can screen those out ahead of time and then
Yes, you can.
approve whether or not they accept that tag. It's kind of an
Right.
important
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a whole. You can spend a day looking at advice on settings for Facebook and privacy and all that. So certainly do that. I mean, if it's a matter of untagging yourself, by all means, go ahead and do that. Just be educated, understand what people can find about you and read about you, and then you can take the appropriate action based on your comfort level. That's really going to be it. Okay. The next couple of slides here are, this is all from Facebook. It's all out there. I am not going to go into it in great detail. The gist of this is people do look. Okay, it's one of the main platforms out there. So again, should fully expect that people will check it out to do a little information gathering on you. Okay, this slide really articulates the general approach just to make sure you keep things private. Things that you don't want other people to find out, you keep private. I actually had one guy I used to mentor, and he had a great conversation topic for me one meeting, and it's not your typical tell me about how you got to where you are, or tell me about professional success. I mean, it was a very well thought out question. And he said, hey, Efren, just to let you know, I write political satire on in my personal life, humor, right? Some of that could uh, maybe upset people. What do you recommend? And so we just chatted about it. I mean, in the end, I think I stopped short of saying, yeah, definitely get rid of it. And I don't even remember reading any of it. But I just remember saying, listen, the fact that you're bringing that up and that you have a concern, that should be enough to say, maybe I need to tighten down those sites and those articles so it's limited. And I think that's what he ended up doing. So watch your privacy, control it, understand it, and again, adjust accordingly. Okay. And more here on Facebook. I'm not an expert on how different apps tie together and how they feed in, but I think with all the press that Facebook has gotten, I have seen that they're doing more to educate and give people permission, or not permission, but capability to hide and take ownership of their personal data. But still, to process and be aware of. Okay. And some of the positives. Okay, so there are some good things that come out of a Facebook social media presence, and some of those things, I mean, the flip side of finding the incriminating stuff, it could be finding well-roundedness, somebody that's well-roundedness, somebody that looks like they have are affiliated with a lot of good groups, share a lot of same organizations that they invest time in. So I think there's other positive things you can certainly get out of there as well. So again, it's a balance between both sides, the stuff that could be controversial and the stuff that really promotes you and your image to hiring managers. Okay. All right. Any questions on the Facebook piece?
Nope. Keep on rolling, Efren.
Okay. All right, so LinkedIn is really it, where I spend most of my time. And now that we have an actual LinkedIn for Basics, we won't go into too much detail here. But I mean, arguably, LinkedIn is the most popular social media networking site. That's why it was created. It's for business professionals. And I think there's some important things. I'm going to show you some facts here, which I think are going to be surprising. Normally, I'll ask people, how do you use LinkedIn? Or do you have a LinkedIn account? I'm going to assume everybody does, and I'm going to assume everybody has at least a cursory, basic setup of LinkedIn. So from there, we can certainly expand upwards and hone it. Okay, so why even bother networking on LinkedIn? And this is the part that I think people really get surprised with. LinkedIn is really the place to be for business professionals. Every time I update this presentation, the numbers go up. I mean, you even saw back in 2012 when they let me know my profile was top 5% viewed. There was 200 million people. I mean, as of this week, the count last report is 675 million. So that there's obviously a lot of people, and you're certainly not going to network with all of them, but that shows there's a lot of people out there that use it. 61 million people on LinkedIn, they're senior level influencers, okay, and 40 million are in decision-making positions. Now contrast that to if you're looking for a job on a job board and you're trying to get the decision makers, how hard that is. You're going one at a time, finding a job, trying to apply. You're not even getting the right person. You're putting it onto an online HR system, right? So supplementing that job search with LinkedIn and expanding your network and increasing your chances of getting to those decision makers can only improve your odds. So remember those numbers there because they can work in your favor. LinkedIn is the most used social media platform amongst Fortune 500 companies. What does that mean? I've talked to recruiters in my own company and they say, yeah, absolutely, we use LinkedIn for recruiting. That CEO that I told you about that I've worked with for years, he certainly does. As a matter of fact, he told me, Efren, it's so easy to write a script. I can find anybody I want and pull so many candidates quickly. So what takeaway I have with that is that I tell people, well, you have to make it easier for people like that, those recruiters, to write a script that finds you. So if your LinkedIn profile is really basic, really fluffy, not well composed, then you're not helping yourself, okay? Because people are using this. People that make their money placing people in corporate America are using this. And so if you at least want to give yourself a shot, you have to take care of your own LinkedIn profile, okay? And that's something that I've actually found more recently. Most of my clients these days aren't just about the resume. They go full tilt and say, Efren, I need the resume, need all the documentation that comes with it. And by the way, just take care of the LinkedIn for me. It's that important. Like I said earlier, the feedback that I got is now LinkedIn is just as important as a good resume. They have to be both tight and ready to go. And then the last bullet here, the 2 billion millennials globally, 87 million of them are LinkedIn. So yeah, as a young demographic that's on there, younger, sure, okay. I think most people now, certainly those recently out of college and people with years of corporate America experience under their belt, have gotten into LinkedIn. What I found is that more people, that the more senior they are, more tenured, I would say, in corporate America, the less they know how to leverage it. Okay, so really spend time on the quality of what you're putting out there. Okay, of those 87 million millennial users here, 11 million are in decision-making positions. So what does that mean? And this is the takeaway. Okay, a lot of the people that attend these classes at the library, and I can't see anybody here, so it's hard to even guess what the age demographic is, plus or minus 10 years. Okay, I've seen typically those with 20 plus years in corporate America that are a little bit more gun shy about using LinkedIn. They didn't really care to really enhance it. Honestly, people have said, I'm more old school. I like to go out there and network, make calls, meet people, and that's certainly 100% valid, if not one of the more important things. However, at the expense of doing anything with LinkedIn because they think that's too techy for me. It's not important. So let these numbers here resonate to say 11 million of these millennials are decision makers. These are the people that are leveraging technology to do well in corporate America now. So if you're not at least putting yourself in a window to be appealing to them, again, you're not helping yourself out. Okay. Any questions on that? You got a couple more slides and then we're wrapping up. Any
No,
questions?
no questions that I'm seeing so far, but it sounds like um, the job search, networking, it's all really integrated together. It's not just a focus on a cover letter, a resume. It's also the LinkedIn profile and using maybe your resume to refer to your LinkedIn profile to help a potential employer learn more about you in the event that your LinkedIn profile doesn't have the proper keywords or things like that, that it's maybe filtered out from the automated review services that corporations are using these days.
Yeah, and I think that the punchline there is that all of that has to be rock solid. Nothing could be haphazard or incomplete. All of that has to dovetail together. You can't have a good LinkedIn profile without a good resume, because if somebody sees a great LinkedIn profile and then you hand them a resume, which is still, by the way, an expectation when you're applying for a job, if those look 180 off, it's going to be like, what am I looking at? What happened? What happened to that person? Or conversely, you're applying for a position online. Somebody sees this great resume, and then all of a sudden they're going to look at you before they bring you in for for an interview, and they're like seeing just not good stuff on a profile. It sends a negative message, right? So that's where I'm saying all that has to be tight and all has to be synchronized. Matter of fact, when I work with my clients, not only we start with the resume, that always goes first, and then once we do the resume and all of the other documents, the cover letter, the thank you letters, even a one-page resume. After my clients sign off on that, and they're like, "Efren, love it. This is good. We can. This is the resume. No other changes." That is what I use to put on somebody's LinkedIn. Okay, that's the last step. So that ensures synchronization. So I mention that because in case there's questions on which order to go in, that is how you need to do it. So again, to ensure that consistency is there and that people that are looking at both will see the same person. Okay.
Right. And so Lynn asks here, how should your LinkedIn relate or be different from your resume?
Oh, great question. So it's almost like that person was in a session before, but so here's the thing. LinkedIn is going to have recommendations for you to make it easy to upload your profile on there, and that includes uploading your resume, and it's going to use its artificial intelligence to map your resume into different places within your LinkedIn profile. I've done that, and I didn't like the way it turned out, so I actually manually do mine. The other part of that is that in my resume, and certainly what I do for all my clients, I don't do anything different for my clients that I don't do for myself. I don't put the ever important job accomplishments in my LinkedIn profile. So for a little context there, when I write a resume, it's very important that the reader has a full view of my work history, and I build that by talking about not just the job titles, the companies, but a really easy to understand write up of what I do in my job. Okay, so you should be doing that too. How do you earn your paycheck? What are your job expectations and requirements? Make it simple enough for grandma to understand so that she or grandpa can understand, oh, that's what you do. 3 to 5 sentences. Okay, maybe a little longer if you've been there for a long time. The most important part is to then put some bullets in there that really articulate what you've done in those jobs, how well you've done those things, right? The best predictor of future performance is past performance. So you have to be able to articulate, yeah, these are the things I've done in my job. My company, my position wanted me to do A, B, C, and D. Okay. What makes that impressive is when you can say, I did A, B, C, and D this well. I brought in $1 million in sales. I brought in 50 new clients. I saved the company 30% in process improvement time by redeveloping this existing process, which was broken. I shortened it so that it freed up 3 people from having to do that same work, and we were able to take care of X number of customers that much earlier. That's the level of detail that most people have a really hard time with. Okay, that's why people like me have this side business, right? So, but you have to get to that point, okay, and that is the difference. That those accomplishments, okay. I spend a lot of time there because I really want to articulate how important that is. But to the question about how is it different than my LinkedIn profile, I don't put that in my LinkedIn. I want the LinkedIn to drive a conversation with me from a recruiter, from somebody that's going to reach out to me and say, hey, Efren, I like what we're seeing. Can we chat? And then I will send them a resume that actually has all that stuff. Okay, so that's how I position it. And that's how I adjust for my own clients. Now, people out here might have a different approach, and that's fine. Okay, I think there's different approaches that will work. Bottom line is it needs to work for you, and if it does, then great. But that I just at least want to explain how I do it and also why I do it the way I do. Any follow up to that? Thanks for that question.
Just one thought I
Yeah.
personally had. Um, is it important to um, is it important to for every user, every LinkedIn user, to keep their profiles updated? Obviously, if you're employed somewhere, uh, your current employer would have concerns if they're starting to see or hear about your resume being floated out to we've all heard those stories about, like, oh, well, I heard you attended such and such resume program, or what have you.
Right.
But it seems like the
Right.
LinkedIn profile is a constant it's similar to your social media profile. It's a constant updating of your status, of your position, of your qualifications, etc.
Right. So let me answer this way. I get that question a lot, right? Oh, what if my company sees it? So I think there's a difference there, right? There's no way your boss or your company is necessarily going to see your LinkedIn changes unless they're part of your network, right? And you accepted that. Now, if you did, it comes with the understanding that when you make those changes, okay, people in that network are going to know, okay, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so let's say they do. I mean, you can actually turn off when you make changes that it won't notify your network. So there's ways. I think LinkedIn has listened to people that have that same concern. So yeah, you turn off. Um, Matter of fact, I saw that when Sprint became T-Mobile, and I updated the company name. There was a little slider button that said "Let notify your network of the change," and I didn't care to. It didn't matter. So I just left it at no. So nobody's going to know. And the only way people are really going to know in that work, if you're worried, is that they're actually looking. Somebody's going to go out there and say, "What's changed on someone's, Efren's resume? Has anything changed?" Okay, and so let's say something did change. I would say, so what? Okay, what are they going to say? Efren, I saw you made this update. You added this job skill, or you added this job responsibility, and um, if you're so inclined, you added this accomplishment in your LinkedIn profile. So what? So what? There shouldn't be anything punitive tied to that. I would push back and say, as a business professional, that it's fair game. Everybody should be doing that. I would question why somebody is not. Okay, somebody. I do get that question, and it is a valid concern, right? That maybe there are companies out there, there are hiring managers that follow somebody's online profile that closely. I would say you need to evaluate if that's a healthy relationship, and if you want to keep working there under that kind of um, approach, then so be it. But again, people aren't necessarily going to see your job hunting either. I mean, unless you're turning your settings and you're actually applying for jobs, I can't go onto my team. I mean, I got a team of 9. I can't go out to their LinkedIn profile and see if they're applying. Certainly don't have time to go out there and scrutinize changes on their LinkedIn profile, right? So my point on this and bringing this up is I hear it a lot, but I think a lot of it is unfounded worry, okay? Because by and large, it shouldn't hurt you to update a professional tool for yourself. So anyway, hope that addresses a little bit of it. Okay, last couple slides here. How to network using LinkedIn. I'm telling this story here in pictures. Rather than usually I'll ask people for their impressions here. I think the big thing here is really the picture. Okay, and this slide is a slide summary of how not to do LinkedIn and how not to do pictures on LinkedIn. So one of the facts here, I don't even know if I had it here. I think it's in another presentation, but I do have it here. It's in one of my notes. Did you know that if you have a good professional photo on LinkedIn, you have a 21 times more chance to 21 times more views and a 36 times more message reach out from people because of a good LinkedIn profile picture. So that's you in a professional picture. The reason I put these out here, maybe you can see some of the obvious flaws in the approach if you go this route. So let's just go clockwise. So the young lady here at the top, not a good LinkedIn profile picture because there's somebody's arm draped around her and you see half of somebody's head. Okay, so not ideal. Sometimes you still see on the right there, no picture. That's the worst thing I think you can do for a LinkedIn profile is not even have a picture. Okay, think about it. It's your first impression. When you meet somebody as a first impression, normally it's generally known that when they see you, you have a nice smiling face, it's professional, blah, blah, blah. It's welcoming, right? So if you don't have a picture and you just have an empty little icon there, also not recommended. Bottom right, you don't want a selfie. Don't use that for your profile picture. The one at the 6 o'clock position way at the bottom, you can't even see that person's face. So it's a pretty tree in a pretty building, but I wouldn't use that one for a LinkedIn profile pic. And this is the same girl here at the 9 o'clock position. There's the rest of her friends. But if you're using that as your LinkedIn profile, it can cause some confusion on whose profile is this, because there's 3 people here. And then last but not least, up in the 11 o'clock position, I have seen this, and I've actually seen this from one of my friends. His profile picture, I think, was throwing a football, and this guy is holding a beer. I would save that to Facebook for Facebook use, but I wouldn't use it for LinkedIn. Okay, pretty self-explanatory and should be obvious, but these are based on live pictures. So there are some people that don't understand the value of it. Any questions? Okay, let's contrast that with this slide here with some good professional pictures. Okay, a lot of them are typically going to be somewhere chest up, clear, smiling. Some people don't even have a guy at the top that doesn't have a tie, right? But it's professional. It's well lit. So a lot of these were professionally taken. Okay, this is good. These are very inviting. Okay, these are good examples of how your LinkedIn profile picture should be. Matter of fact, when I work with clients, I'll tell them, listen, if you don't have a good professional picture, I will get my DSLR camera with my portrait lens and take one for you. It's that important. So bottom line, look at your profile picture now on LinkedIn. If it doesn't resemble one of these or is that clear or that inviting, consider changing it, okay? And here's some of the data that I gave you earlier. Let's see. other tips for using LinkedIn. So there's the 21 times more views, 36 times more messages. Again, I'll come back to what I said earlier. Don't forget to have your resume updated. Okay, you want to complete as much as your profile areas as possible. A lot of people have volunteer work that they can add, but they don't, and they should. I know a few people, including some of my last clients, that have had patents that they didn't add in there or weren't complete. So I took care of that for them. So you want to make sure your profile is as updated as possible, and I think that'll make sure whoever's reading or stopping on your page has the best view and image on you. Certainly, good idea to also join groups, start groups if you want. There's plenty out there. As an example, I got my master's from Southern Methodist University, and when I was looking for LinkedIn groups, I found a lot of the Southern Methodist University groups were all based in Dallas. People were posting stuff on there about going to downtown or meetups in Dallas near SMU. Other people are publishing to that group, real estate sales. I mean, it was just all over the board, and that's fine. I'm still a member there. So what I did, and did this a couple of years ago, I started my own Southern Methodist University group for alumni, open to all. But specifically catering to those that weren't in Dallas. I stipulated that no sales pitches, no MLM stuff, none of that stuff on there. It should be professional topics. I think last I looked, it was 1,500 members or something like that. So my point of bringing that up is you can take matters in your own hands, start your own group if it makes sense, and then expand your network on your own. Okay. One other important part that I think is very important is the recommendations in LinkedIn. Certainly ask for recommendations from those that can give you a good one, and by the same token, write some for others. Those go a long way. In addition to seeing a very good, thorough professional background, it definitely helps once the visitor to your page can see that you have a bunch of people that say, hey, Dylan's a great guy. I like working with him when we were in this company, and these are the reasons. It says a lot. For somebody to go onto social media and attest to your abilities like that is very powerful. But they just don't land in your inbox out of the blue. You have to go after those. You have to reciprocate and write some for some of those close contacts as well. Okay. And then, like I mentioned earlier, last but not least, make sure you scrutinize. I personally scrutinize all requests a lot. I don't know what random people will do with my LinkedIn network. Okay, I've always treated my LinkedIn network like gold. Somebody that I get a lot of recruiters, and I can see them coming in there. If I connect, all of a sudden they're spamming everybody in my connections list, and I don't want that. So build a little bit of scrutiny into your process before you click accept, and I think that'll serve you well. Okay. I think, let's see, anything else here at the tail end of this. So last couple slides here. These are just some ideas from when I talk to people about surprise places where they were able to get some good network contacts. This is it. Some very obvious ones. Kids sporting events, those kind of things are all there, right? You just have to change your frame of reference and say it's not just, for example, a kids event or a church service. There's some business professionals here that could probably benefit from knowing and networking with. Okay. Okay. And the closing thoughts. Okay, just a couple here. Stuff that we already talked to, but bottom line is time is ticking. Get working on it. Don't find yourself in a jam and then wish you had started it much earlier. Okay. We did talk about the risks and advantages, but everything that I talked about, some of it could be a little bit on the risks, the disadvantages. There's certainly many more advantages to having an active networking plan. Okay. All right. this is a little bit about my approach. Some people say, well, how exactly do you do it? And this is it. I mean, this is right out of my playbook on how I work with clients one-on-one. And it does take a lot of work, and the onus is on the individual, stuff that everybody here on the call can do. But you have to keep it organized. You have to put some good thought into it, a lot of good self-introspect, and then you will eventually have a networking plan that you're going to be proud of. Okay. All right. So we are at the end of the presentation, and we have 3 minutes to spare. I timed it right because we built in the questions throughout. So that said, Dylan, are there any last questions that might have come through the chat window?
Nothing else that I've seen. Marty points out, she just compliments you. It's such valuable information. Thank you for sharing it all. I've tried to back up some of the information that you've shared with some links. So everybody, if you haven't already done so before we bounce out, be sure to click on those links and save those for the future. Again, we will have this recording available for other people to view. So I'm so excited that other people will be able to gain this info at some point in the future at their leisure.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you to everybody for joining. Hope to see everybody on the June 1st. If there's no other questions, we are a wrap. Thanks to Dylan for facilitating, Marty for helping set up as well, and everybody have a good rest of the week. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Efren. And just to point out, our next career and finance presentation will take place Thursday, May 21st, in addition to Efren's 6/1 date. That May 21st program will be focused on interviewing skills and will feature Karen Sillins from A+ Career and Resume. More career and finance programs are listed at www.jocolibrary.org/events/career-finance. Also, be sure to follow the library's Facebook page, facebook.com/jocolibrary, to receive notifications for more additional live online Johnson County Library programming for all ages. Thank you all again, and have a great evening.